I recently built a new PC, and it is by far the most complex PC that I've ever built. For starters, it's the first Xeon PC that I've built, which comes with its own set of headaches. And probably the part that stressed me out the most was this is the first custom coolant loop system that I've built. I had spent nearly $6,000 on this whole system, and one leak could ruin everything. So that produced a lot of anxiety. However, seeing as I'm recording on this PC right now, everything did work out just fine. Now, there is a ton of footage in this build project, so it is a lot to get through. And in light of that, I've decided to break this up into parts. So this is going to be the start of a series where I go through every single step in the build process, and then at the end of the series, I will take all of the videos and put them together. And when that final build video is done, what I'll do is cut that down to the bare minimum and create a hyperlapse that will show the entire build process in 10 minutes or less. So that's the goal for the project. In this intro video, I'm going to take you through all of the components that I chose for this system, their specs, and talk about why I chose each one. That way, if you're planning to drop a bunch of cash on an expensive build yourself, you can get a good idea of exactly what you'll need for the whole project. To make this easy, I've got all of the component product pages open up in tabs on my computer, and we can just step through each one really quickly and discuss why I chose each one. Let's start with the motherboard. We have the ASRock W790WS, and the reason I chose this specific motherboard is because it supports 4th generation Intel Xeon W series processors, of which there are a wide variety to choose from, which means I could start with something on the lower end, which is still quite powerful, and eventually I can step this up to the highest CPU on this list, which will give me quite a lot of performance. Also, this motherboard supports DDR5 and PCIe 5.0, which provides even more future-proofing, as this means I can keep up with the next several generations of RAM, NVMe drives, and GPUs. It does have 4 PCIe 5.0 lanes and 1 PCIe 4.0 lane, which means I can put several GPUs in this machine. Another important feature I was looking for are the Thunderbolt ports, and really I just wanted one. This one happened to come with 2, which is very nice, but having Thunderbolt is a definite must for a PC like this, where you're going to need to transfer huge files from other PCs or other devices. Of course, it comes with a whole host of USB ports, which are also pretty nice. And then the last real requirement for me was that it needed to have a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, and this one happens to have 2. But that's important because I currently have a 1 gigabit fiber connection through AT&T, but they do have 2.5 and 5 gigabit connections, and very soon they'll be adding a 10 gigabit connection as well. So having this fast Ethernet port is extremely important to be able to keep up with those speeds. Overall, I think it has a very nice aesthetic. Of course, the PCB itself is black, and then it has all of these shields for the chipset and the SSDs, as well as for the I/O port, that are all anodized black. So it provides a nice aesthetic, and all of the components that are going in this are black as well, as you'll see in just a moment. So everything matches very neatly. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'll just show it on screen so you can pause the video and take a look if you'd like. Alright, so that pretty much covers it for the motherboard. The next thing obviously is going to be the CPU. I've gone with this Intel Xeon W3-2423 processor, which, as you can see right here, is a 6-core 12-thread processor with a max turbo frequency of 4.2 gigahertz. It provides plenty of performance for now, but has a relatively low retail price, which, as I'm already spending a lot of money on this build, this helps me keep the cost down just a little. It does support up to 2 terabytes of DDR5, and of course it supports PCIe 5.0. And I've been using this PC for about 2 months now for video production in Premiere Pro, as well as for running a variety of AI models in OpenWebUI and Comfy UI, as well as some custom models that I've written myself. And I can tell you that this CPU specifically does a fantastic job at getting data off of the disk and transferring it back and forth between the RAM and the GPU. So again, while this CPU is on the lower end of this W series line of Xeon processors, it is still plenty powerful if you're not looking to drop a ton of cash on the CPU alone. Whenever I do have the cash, the CPU that I will be upgrading to is this 3575X, which as you can see is very expensive, but it is an absolute monster of a CPU. 44 cores, 88 threads, and a max turbo of 4.8 gigahertz. This thing consumes 408 watts of power by itself, so it is an absolute monster. It supports up to 4 terabytes of memory, which of course I will never be able to put into this machine because it's just way too expensive. Supports PCIe 5.0 up to 112 lanes, which again is just completely overkill. On the GPU, we have gone with the RTX 4090. It has 24 gigs of G6X memory, and I'll just show a quick shot of the full specs. You can pause the video and take a look if you'd like. For the primary system drive, I've chosen to go with this Samsung 990 EVO, seeing as it is a PCIe 5.0 NVMe drive. It's 2 terabytes, which is plenty for a system drive. Really not much else to say about that. As a backup drive, I have included this Crucial P3 Plus 4 terabyte. It is also NVMe. However, as you can see, it is PCIe 4.0, which is just a little bit slower, but that is just fine for a backup storage drive. And additionally, I had 2 other NVMe drives laying around. Both are 512 gigs. They are older, they are slower, but just to put an extra terabyte of storage in there, since the motherboard does have a total of 4 slots, I went ahead and put those in there as well. So with the Samsung 2 terabyte system drive, the Crucial 4 terabyte storage drive, and then those 2 additional 512 gig storage drives, that brings us to a total of 7 terabytes of storage on this system, which is definitely plenty for now. Now, moving on to the RAM, I have started out with 2 of these 64 gig DDR5 Kingston modules, and as you can see, the speed here is plenty fast enough to keep up with my CPU. So for now, that gives me a total of 128 gigs of RAM, and so far that has been more than enough. And since these are just boring green server grade RAM modules, I went ahead and grabbed these Akasa Vegas RAM Mate addressable RGB heatsinks. These are also black anodized aluminum, which matches the rest of the system. Obviously, this will help keep the RAM cooler, and it provides a way to just cover up that standard green PCB of the RAM modules so that they match the rest of the aesthetic of the build. Now, for the power, we needed something pretty hefty, of course. The 4090 alone can use up to around 650 watts at times, and while the CPU only uses around 150 watts, this gives us a lot of overhead for whenever we want to upgrade to the W9 CPU, which of course can use up to 400 watts. And then whenever I'm able to add more 4090s to the system, I will just replace this with something even beefier and then use this for another build. Now for the fun part, the cooling system. Overall, the cooling system alone was around $1,200, but seeing as I am using this PC for AI workloads as well as video production workloads, I wanted to make sure everything stayed nice and cool. So I decided to go a little overly cautious with the coolant system. Being that this was my first ever custom coolant system build, I decided to grab this Thermaltake kit to kind of make things easier and make sure I had all of the pieces that I needed. And then I just supplemented that kit with a few extra components. The kit here comes with the radiator, the reservoir and pump, 3 radiator fans, a CPU block, which I was not able to use since it is way too small for this Xeon CPU, plenty of hardline tubes, and of course the fittings for the tubes. Overall, I would say this is a pretty nice kit. I would prefer a larger reservoir or perhaps a distro plate, but again, this system was already getting quite expensive and distro plates alone are pretty pretty expensive on their own. So I just went ahead and stuck with the stock reservoir that comes with this kit. Also, I grabbed 2 of these 2-pack 120mm RGB fans from Thermaltake, as well as 1 3-pack of these Swafan EX12 ARGB fans, as these do have reversible fan blades. So I use these for my intake fans, and all of the remaining fans are exhaust fans. That allows me to have intake fans that aren't flipped upside down. Additionally, I went ahead and grabbed 1 more 360mm radiator. This one is a Corsair, which doesn't match the rest of the Thermaltake components that I've used for the coolant system, but I found a really good deal on it, and the way it's positioned in the case, the branding is covered up, so there's no way you could tell what brand it is anyways. And since I have the additional radiator, I went ahead and grabbed this 6-pack of additional compression fittings, since the kit only comes with enough for the components included in the kit. Now, the CPU block was a challenge. There are very few available CPU blocks for this socket. Most of what you're going to find are going to be air-cooled solutions, and if you want to do something that is water-cooled, pretty much your only option is going to be this Bixby CPU block here. Before this, I hadn't had any experience with Bixby, so I didn't quite know what to expect, but I do have to say the quality is fantastic. It looks really great. The machining is fantastic. The anodizing is great. It's also very heavy. It's a hefty CPU block, so the cooling is very nice. Also, Bixby included some Sour Patch Kids in my kit for some reason. I'm not really sure why they did that, but I'm a fan. It was nice, and of course they were delicious. So thank you, Bixby, for the free candy. And then lastly, we have the peripherals. I'm not a big gamer or anything, but I just wanted the peripherals to also match the same black and RGB aesthetic that the rest of the build has. So I went ahead and grabbed this Apex 3, which isn't a mechanical keyboard. Again, I'm not a gamer, so that doesn't matter too much to me, but it does have a very nice feel. It also comes with this magnetic wrist rest thing, so that just magnetically attaches to the keyboard and provides a little bit of additional support for your wrists. For the mouse, I went with something again that matches the black and RGB aesthetic and isn't terribly expensive. This has the honeycomb pattern. It looks very nice. It's very lightweight, very responsive, and so if you're not like a serious gamer or something, I would definitely recommend this Aerox 3. It has worked pretty well for me so far. And then finally, I have this Quick Prism cloth woven RGB mousepad. I did not even know RGB mousepads were a thing, but I went ahead and grabbed it because again, it wasn't that expensive and it does match the black on RGB aesthetic. And now that I have it, I have to say it is quite pleasing. Yeah, there's a dog out there. He's being annoying. What's that boy barking at? Go get him. Go tell him to shut up. There's a mean boy outside. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so that covers all of the components in the build. I will include some footage here as well so you can get an idea of what the overall aesthetic looks like. And in the next video, we will cover the motherboard installation, including the CPU cooling block, drives, and RAM installation, as well as getting the motherboard itself into the case. Of course, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Obviously, that helps me out a lot. And be sure to share this with anyone you know who might find this useful as well. For now, I have a stable video diffusion video to get back to editing, so I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.